Hello, good evening, or whatever time this is for you. But as I'm recording this, it's the evening of March the 18th. That's Wednesday, and our third installment here of Faith Talks. Yeah, I think that's probably a better name based on a bit of feedback from folks along the way. Quarren Talks. I loved the sort of connection there to the what's going on, but one of the difficulties was you put it in writing, and a couple of people thought I was saying something about the Quran, and that was certainly not the intention. But at any rate, the third of these let's say Faith Talks, and tonight I want to talk in particular about prayer and how do we pray during this time of pandemic. How do we pray during this situation that we're all facing of being sort of away from our jobs maybe, or school, or whatever it is, and not having all of those life conveniences that we may be used to, not having the whatever it may be. On top of all that, on top of maybe not being able to go out and everything, those of you who are at home with children are adjusting to, well, being at home with children and having to play the part not only of parent but also of teacher, and of having to perhaps try to work your job from home as well. And so with all that in mind, one of the things I've been talking a lot about is the importance of prayer. And I can imagine it's easy to think at some point, well, that's nice. How the heck do I do that in the midst of everything, of trying to work, of trying to keep my kids from fighting with each other, in terms of trying to keep my kids focused on their schoolwork? All of those things. And at the same time, that little bit of anxiety that may be creeping in for all of us, like, what the heck is this virus going to do? What's going to happen to us economically, with my job, what have you? And so all of those sorts of things can be distractions to prayer. And so the first thing I would recommend is acknowledge that. Acknowledge that, yes, I have the possibility right now of being distracted at my prayer. And in fact, that possibility now is much stronger than it would be in other times. And so acknowledge that. That's the first thing. Second thing, though, is the importance, first of all, just to pray. Are you setting aside some time to pray? Are you making that time to be with God? And recognize that that's ultimately what it is, that prayer is our time to be with God. It's our time to recognize His love, His presence, to ask for Him for what we need right now. And I can, one of the things I can see, the appetite is there for people to pray right now. I was blown away, or I still am blown away, the number of people who are responding so positively to the masses that I'm putting up on Facebook Live. It's by no means a professional shot that I've set up in there. Not a high-end production by any means, but yet people are there. They want to pray together, even if it's through an internet connection. People have that desire. So recognize that, first of all. So that's, above all else, yes, recognize this is a difficult time to pray. But second, recognize that all the things that make it difficult also make it very important to pray. And so set aside that time. And recognize, the prayers, it's going to be a couple different things. It's going to be, and sometimes that rote prayer, of a particular prayer that you know already, something that you may have memorized, something that you may have available to you that you can read. Catholics, we have prayer cards and different physical things that we may be able to touch, to look at, to help us to focus in. Take advantage of any of those. If you have a prayer book, don't be afraid to pick it up, look through something. So definitely, set aside that time. In fact, tomorrow night, March 19th, Pope Francis has asked families to pray the rosary at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. To pray the rosary, and that's the idea, kind of whatever your time zone is, to pray the rosary for an end to the coronavirus and the difficulties there. Now, if you have young children, you probably put them to bed before that time, and so maybe you want to pray earlier than that for your rosary. Or if they're young enough, maybe it's, okay, let's get them to bed first, and then pray with just with the older ones or just with mom and dad or whatever it is. But definitely prayer, and the rosary is a wonderful thing in the evening too. Especially if, again, you're having some of those little squabbles that families can have when you're all sort of confined in your home. And you know, we've had, today was pretty good weather most of the day, but we've had rain at least a little bit of the day, pretty much every day. I'm pretty sure it was raining early this morning, unless my days are all just running together at this point. But the rosary as a family, fantastic thing. You know, it's an old saying, but it's true. The family that prays together stays together. And so your prayer at that point becomes part of that connection and relationship with God, but it also very much becomes part of your family togetherness. Because the hope would be that as you pray, you find a way to recognize that, okay, that little squabble we had earlier about the very last popsicle, or that little spat we had about who was going to get to use the computer at this time, or that little question about which TV show or which set of music where you're going to have. All of that gets a certain perspective when we pray. We can recognize what's important and what's not important. So prayer, especially family prayer, is more valuable than ever right now. And I really do highly recommend the rosary. If you can do 9 p.m. on the 19th, fantastic. If you cannot do 9 p.m., look for sometime earlier, especially those of us who are parishioners of St. Joseph in Fayetteville. It's our patron saint day tomorrow. So pray the rosary there. We'll have Mass live streamed also. We'll have a link go out on that during the day on Thursday the 19th, but know that you have that opportunity there to pray with us at that Mass, but again, pray the rosary in the evening as well. So, rote prayer, the rosary, great thing to rely on, great thing to be able to pray there. Contemplative prayer, though, also an opportunity to meditate, meditative prayer, to think about where is God with us. And so one of the best ways to do that is if you have scriptural passages that you're able to read. The daily readings are fantastic for this. In yesterday's talk about resources, I mentioned a couple of things. Magnificat and the USCCB both have sites where you can look at the daily readings. Read through those, but don't just read through them to read it like you'd be reading a novel or something. Read it slowly, or maybe read it once quickly and then go again slowly. Think about the different passages. Try to savor those. Think about what's going on. Will you get distracted sometimes? Yes, there's a good chance that you will. Again, distraction in prayer is a common thing for any of us. But distraction during a time of pandemic and difficulty, even more likely. So, if you get distracted, don't beat yourself up. Just do a few things. One, turn your distraction into a prayer. Your distraction is probably related to the state of the world right now. If it is, take that moment to say, Lord, I'm going to dedicate this moment to pray for everyone suffering from COVID-19, everyone affected by the coronavirus. And then ease yourself back into whatever it is that you were looking at before in terms of scriptural passages or spiritual reading or whatever, or just that time with God. Another thing, know what you can do to just bring yourself back to the moment. This morning, as I was praying the office of readings, and one of the things that we as priests pray every day is something called the Liturgy of the Hours. And the office of readings has not only some psalms, but some longer readings. And I usually love these readings. Well, I caught myself at some point today kind of glazing my eyes over them, but not really processing, not thinking through what I was reading. So I just paused for a moment and just prayed the Lord's Prayer, a simple Our Father, just to kind of bring myself back to the moment, bring myself back to the rest of my prayer. And think about that for as well. You may have the Lord's Prayer. You may use Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. That's another great one. Maybe it's a Hail Mary, whatever it is. But be ready there to bring yourself back into God's presence. So, prayer, now more than ever. Acknowledge you're going to get a little bit distracted. But then recognize that's even more need to pray. And if you do get distracted, pray for whatever is causing the distraction. And then after you've done that, bring yourself back into the moment and recognize God is with us. He wants to be with you. He's there with all of us. He wants to strengthen you in this time. Please be with him as much as he is with you. God bless you all. May you have a wonderful night.